Some memories don't disappear. They hide, waiting for the right person to drag them back into the light. The first thing I felt was his grip, not painful, not gentle either, just certain, like my wrist had always belonged in his hand, like he had reached for me 1,000 times before, and this was just another repetition of something I couldn't remember. "Where did you get that necklace?" he asked, his voice low, controlled. But underneath it, something cracked, something real, and when I looked up, I forgot how to breathe. Because he wasn't looking at me the way men usually do, not curiosity, not interest, not even attraction. He looked at me like a question he had spent years trying to answer. And suddenly, I was the answer. I swallowed, my fingers instinctively brushing the small silver pendant resting against my collarbone. Warm from my skin, familiar, safe. I bought it. I said, too quickly, too clean, the kind of lie that sounds right until someone who knows the truth hears it. His eyes darkened, not in anger, but recognition, and that was worse, so much worse, because anger I could handle. Recognition meant history, and history meant something I didn't have. His thumb shifted slightly against my pulse, like he was measuring it, counting it, reading something written under my skin that I couldn't see. The room around us kept moving, people laughing, glasses clinking, a waiter passing too close, but none of it reached me. It was like the world had stepped back exactly 3 feet and left us standing in something heavier, something quieter. "That's impossible," he murmured, almost to himself, like I had just broken a rule I didn't know existed. My heart stuttered, because the way he said it didn't sound like doubt. It sounded like certainty being forced to change shape. I tried to pull my hand back, a small movement, subtle, but his fingers tightened just enough to stop me. Not trapping, not hurting, just not letting go, and for a second, a strange, sharp feeling passed through me. Not fear, not exactly. Something deeper, something that made my chest ache like I had just missed something important, something I was supposed to remember. His eyes lifted from the necklace to my face again, slower this time, studying, searching, like every detail mattered, like every inch of me was evidence. "Look at me," he said softly, and I realized I already was, completely, helplessly, and I hated that. I hated how my body stayed still when it should have moved, how my voice stayed quiet when it should have told him to let go. Because somewhere, beneath the confusion and the rising panic, there was something else, something dangerous, something that felt like recognition too. Even though I knew I had never seen him before, and yet, my pulse betrayed me, racing under his touch like it already knew his name, like it had been waiting for him to find me. And when his grip finally loosened, just slightly, just enough for me to breathe again, he didn't step back, didn't look away, and I realized with a chill that settled deep in my chest, whatever this was, whatever I had just stepped into without meaning to, it wasn't over, not even close. He let go, but the imprint of his touch stayed, like my skin refused to forget what my mind could not hold. I took a step back, then another, creating distance I thought I needed, but the space between us only made his presence sharper, clearer, like stepping away from a fire only made you realize how cold everything else was. "You are lying," he said quietly, not accusing, not angry, just stating it like a fact that had already settled into place. I shook my head, forcing a small, controlled breath. "I am not," I replied, but even to my own ears, my voice sounded thinner than it should have, like it did not fully belong to me anymore. His gaze dropped again to the necklace, and this time, something softer flickered through his expression, something almost familiar, like he was seeing a memory instead of an object. "That piece does not exist in stores," he continued, slower now, each word deliberate. "It was made by hand. There is only one." My fingers instinctively curled around the pendant, shielding it, protecting it, though I did not know why. I had never questioned it before, never thought about where it came from. It had simply always been there, like a part of me I never examined too closely. "You are mistaken," I said, but doubt slipped in, quiet and dangerous, because I could not remember buying it, could not remember receiving it, could not remember anything about it except that it had always been mine. His eyes lifted again, locking onto mine with a weight that made it hard to look away. "What is your name?" he asked, and the question should have been simple, harmless, but something about the way he said it made it feel like he was asking for more than just a name, like he was asking for confirmation, for proof. Emma, I answered, my voice steadier this time. Emma Carter. He repeated it slowly, like he was testing how it sounded, like he was comparing it to something else in his mind, something that did not quite match. A faint crease formed between his brows, not confusion, but resistance, like he did not want to accept what he was seeing. No, he murmured under his breath, barely audible. That is not. He stopped himself, jaw tightening slightly, and for the first time, I saw something shift in him, not control, but the effort to maintain it. I took advantage of that moment, stepping fully out of his reach, turning slightly as if to leave, because staying felt like standing too close to something I did not understand, something that might pull me in before I had a chance to resist. But before I could take another step, his voice stopped me again, softer now, almost careful. Do you remember anything before you were 10? The question hit harder than it should have. Sharp and unexpected, my breath caught, and for a second, the world tilted just enough to make me lose my balance internally, because the answer was immediate, instinctive, and deeply unsettling. No, I said, the word leaving my lips before I could think about it. His eyes closed briefly, just for a second, like that single answer confirmed something he had been afraid to believe, and when they opened again, they were different, not colder, not warmer, just certain. I knew it, he said quietly, more to himself than to me, and something in my chest tightened, a strange, unfamiliar pressure building behind my ribs. Knew what? I asked, but he did not answer right away. Instead, he took a small step back, finally giving me the space I had been trying to claim, but it did not feel like freedom. It felt like preparation, like something had just begun instead of ended. His gaze never left mine as he spoke again, calm, controlled, undeniable. You should not be here tonight, he said, and the way he said it made it sound less like a warning and more like a realization that had come too late. My heart started to race again, not from fear this time, but from something else, something deeper, something that felt dangerously close to recognition, and I hated that I did not understand why. The music came back first, distant, muffled, like I was underwater and the world was happening somewhere above me. I blinked slowly, forcing myself to move, to turn, to step away from him, because staying felt dangerous in a way I could not explain. I should go, I said, more to myself than to him. But the moment I took 2 steps, I felt it again, that awareness, sharp and immediate, like something unseen had shifted. I glanced over my shoulder, and he was still there, exactly where I left him. Watching, not following, not stopping me, just watching, and somehow that was worse, because it felt intentional, like he did not need to chase me, like he already knew I would not get far. I pushed through the crowd, weaving between people who smelled like expensive perfume and polished confidence, my heels clicking too loud against the marble floor, my heartbeat refusing to slow down. I reached the edge of the ballroom, near the tall glass doors that led outside, and only then did I let myself breathe, just once, deep and shaky. My fingers found the necklace again, gripping it tighter this time, like it could anchor me to something real, something mine. But even as I held it, a strange unease settled in, because his words echoed louder now that I was away from him. There is only one. I closed my eyes for a second, pressing the cool metal into my palm, trying to force a memory, any memory, but nothing came. Just a faint, fleeting sensation, like a whisper I could not quite hear. A child's voice, distant, urgent, and then gone. I opened my eyes quickly, heart racing again. That had not been there before. That feeling, that almost memory, it was new. Or maybe it had always been there, and I had just never noticed. Emma, a voice called from behind me, and I flinched before I could stop myself, turning to see Claire, the event coordinator, walking toward me with a polite smile that did not reach her eyes. There you are. We have been looking for you, she said, glancing briefly at my hands, still wrapped tightly around the necklace. Are you all right? I forced a small smile, nodding. Yes, just needed some air, I replied, but even as I said it, I knew it was not entirely true, because the air did not feel different out here. It still felt heavy, like something had shifted inside me and refused to settle back into place. Claire followed my gaze toward the ballroom, her expression changing slightly when she noticed where I was looking, or rather, who. Because even from this distance, He was impossible to miss, standing still while the rest of the room moved around him, like he existed on a different rhythm. "You should be careful," she said quietly, her voice dropping just enough that only I could hear it. I frowned slightly. "About what?" I asked, but she hesitated, just for a second, like she had already said too much. "Some people here are not casual company," she replied, choosing her words carefully. But it was the way she avoided saying his name that told me everything I needed to know. I looked back again, and this time, our eyes met instantly, like he had never stopped watching, like he had been waiting for me to look back, a slow, deliberate recognition passing between us, and in that moment, something inside me tightened, not fear, not entirely, but something deeper, something that felt like standing on the edge of a memory I could not see. And then, as if proving Claire right in the most unsettling way possible, he reached into his jacket, pulled out his phone, and without breaking eye contact, said something to someone I could not hear, his gaze never leaving mine, steady, certain, like whatever came next was already in motion, and I had just become a part of it whether I wanted to or not. The call ended before I could even process it, but I knew, somehow, that whatever he had just set in motion was already moving faster than I could outrun. I forced myself to turn away from him, this time not looking back, not giving him another chance to pull me into that silent gravity he carried with him. "I need to leave," I said to Claire, more firmly now, and she did not argue, which told me more than any warning could have. She simply nodded, stepping aside. "There is a car service downstairs," she offered, but her eyes flickered again toward the ballroom, toward him, like she was measuring something I could not see. "Take it," she added quietly, and this time, it did not sound like a suggestion. I moved quickly, faster than I wanted to admit, my heels echoing against the polished floor as I headed toward the private elevators, my reflection catching briefly in the mirrored walls, pale, unsettled, unfamiliar. I looked like someone who had just been told a truth her life was not ready to hold. The doors slid open with a soft chime, and I stepped inside, pressing the lobby button with a hand that was steadier than I felt. The doors closed, sealing me in a space that felt too small, too quiet. And for the first time since he touched me, I was alone, truly alone. I exhaled slowly, leaning back against the cool metal wall, my fingers finding the necklace again, tracing its edges, memorizing its shape as if it might reveal something if I just focused hard enough. But instead of clarity, I got something else, a flicker, brief and sharp, like a photograph flashing behind my eyes, a dark room, a small hand gripping mine, a voice whispering something urgent, something important. But the words slipped away before I could catch them. I gasped softly, opening my eyes, my reflection staring back at me with the same confusion, the same quiet fear. "What are you?" I whispered, not sure if I meant the necklace or myself. The elevator slowed, the soft hum shifting as it approached the ground floor, and just as the doors began to open, a thought hit me, sudden and unwelcome. He had known, not guessed, not assumed, known that I did not remember anything before I was 10. My stomach tightened, because that was not something people noticed, not something they could see, unless they already had a reason to look. The doors opened fully, revealing the quiet, dimly lit lobby, the contrast to the bright, loud ballroom above almost disorienting. I stepped out, scanning the space instinctively, half expecting to see him there already, waiting, but he was not, at least. Not where I could see him, which somehow made it worse, because it meant he did not need to be visible to be present. I walked toward the exit, the cool night air pressing softly against my skin as the doors opened. And there, exactly as promised, a sleek black car waited at the curb, engine running, headlights cutting clean lines through the darkness. The driver stood beside it, composed, professional, opening the door the moment he saw me approach. "Miss Carter," he said, and I stopped, the sound of my name landing heavier than it should have. I had not told anyone downstairs, not here, not recently. My heartbeat picked up again, slower this time, deeper, more deliberate. "Who sent you?" I asked. Even though I already knew the answer, the driver did not hesitate, did not look confused, did not question me. He simply met my gaze with calm certainty. "Mr. Volkov would like to ensure you arrive home safely," he said, and something in the way he said safely made the word feel less like protection and more like inevitability. I glanced back once, up toward the building, toward the floor where everything had changed without warning. And even though I could not see him anymore, I felt it, that same awareness, steady, unyielding, like his eyes were still on me, like they had never left. And as I stood there, caught between stepping forward into that car or turning away into the unknown, one truth settled quietly into place. Whatever had started tonight was not something I could simply walk away from, because somehow, impossibly, it had already found me long before I ever walked into that room. I should have walked away. I should have thanked him and disappeared into the night like none of this had ever happened. But my feet did not move. They stayed planted right there on the edge of something I could not see but could feel, heavy, inevitable. I looked at the open car door, then at the driver, then back at the building behind me, my reflection faint in the glass, small, uncertain, and for a moment, I hated how easy it would be to step inside, how simple it would be to let someone else take control of where I went next. I did not ask for a ride, I said quietly, more to remind myself than him. But the driver only nodded once, like my refusal had already been calculated into whatever plan was unfolding. Of course, he replied calmly, not closing the door, not stepping away, just waiting. And that was the problem. He was not persuading me. He was not insisting. He was certain I would get in. I tightened my grip on the necklace, the metal pressing into my palm, grounding me, or at least trying to, because my thoughts were not steady anymore. They kept circling back to him, to his voice, to the way he said impossible like it had weight, like it meant something specific, something real. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to think clearly. I could call a ride, walk a few blocks, disappear into the normal rhythm of the city, but the idea felt thin, like pretending nothing had changed when I knew something had, something important, something that had been waiting for me to notice it. I stepped forward before I could overthink it, sliding into the back seat, the leather cool and smooth beneath me, the door closing with a quiet, final sound that echoed louder than it should have, sealing me inside. The driver returned to his seat without a word, the engine humming softly as the car pulled away from the curb, merging seamlessly into the flow of late-night traffic. I watched the city lights blur past the window, reflections stretching and shifting across the glass, familiar streets suddenly feeling unfamiliar, like I was seeing them from a distance I had never noticed before. Where are we going? I asked after a moment, my voice steady again, controlled, but the question lingered in the air longer than expected. The driver glanced at me briefly through the rearview mirror, then back to the road. Home, he said simply, and the word should have been reassuring, but instead, it tightened something in my chest, because I was no longer sure what that meant, or if it was still entirely mine. I leaned back slightly, letting my head rest against the seat, my fingers loosening just enough for the necklace to fall back against my collarbone. And as it settled there, a strange warmth spread through me, subtle but undeniable, like it recognized something I did not. I closed my eyes for just a second, just long enough for another fragment to slip through, softer this time, less sharp, a quiet laugh, light, familiar, followed by a voice I could not place, saying my name. Not Emma, something else, something close but not quite the same. I opened my eyes quickly, my breath catching, my reflection staring back at me from the window. But it did not feel entirely like mine, not in that moment, not with that echo still lingering in my head. Who are you? I whispered again, but this time, the question felt different, deeper, like it was no longer about the necklace, or even about him. It was about me, and that was far more unsettling. The car slowed as we approached my building, the familiar structure rising into view, solid, unchanged, a piece of my life that still made sense. But as the car came to a stop, I did not move right away, because something told me that stepping out would not return things to normal. It would only confirm that normal had already shifted. The driver stepped out, opening my door once more, his expression unchanged, professional, controlled. We have arrived, he said, and I nodded slowly, stepping out onto the sidewalk, the cool air brushing against my skin, grounding me just enough to take a breath. I turned toward the entrance, taking 2 steps forward before something made me stop, a feeling, subtle but unmistakable, that I was not alone. I turned back instinctively, scanning the street, the parked cars, the shadows between them, and then I saw it. Across the road, partially hidden in the dim light. Another black car, still, silent, and even from this distance, I knew, without seeing him, without any proof at all, that he was there, watching, not following, not approaching, just waiting, like he had all the time in the world. And for the first time since this began, I understood something clearly. This was not about coincidence. This was not about a random encounter. This was something that had been set in motion long before tonight, and I had just finally stepped into it. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at that second car like it might disappear if I blinked. But it did not. It stayed exactly where it was, quiet, patient, certain, just like him. A slow breath left my lips, and I forced myself to turn away, because standing in the middle of the sidewalk like I was waiting for something I did not understand felt like giving in, and I was not ready to do that. Not yet. I walked into the building, the glass doors closing behind me with a soft click that sounded louder than usual, sealing me inside a space that had always felt safe, familiar, mine. But tonight, even that felt slightly off, like the walls had shifted by an inch I could not measure. The lobby was empty. The overhead lights too bright, too clean, every sound echoing just a little too much. My footsteps, my breathing, the quiet hum of the elevator as I pressed the button. I glanced once over my shoulder, instinctively, but the street was no longer visible from here. Only my reflection staring back at me in the glass. And for a second, I hesitated, because something about that reflection felt incomplete, like it was missing a piece I could not name. The elevator doors slid open, and I stepped inside, pressing the button for my floor with a steady hand. Even though my thoughts were anything but steady, the doors closed, and just like before, I was alone. Or at least I should have been. I leaned back slightly, exhaling, trying to slow the rhythm of my heart. But the silence did not help. It only made everything louder inside my head. His voice, his questions, the way he said my name like it did not quite belong to me. And then that other thought, the one I could not shake. He had known, not guessed, not assumed, known that I remembered nothing before I was 10. My fingers curled again around the necklace, holding it tighter this time, like it might answer me if I just asked the right question. And for a moment, I almost expected it to, because another flicker came, softer than before, but clearer, a hallway, long, dimly lit, footsteps echoing, not mine, someone else's, walking beside me, a hand holding mine, warm, steady, and a voice, close this time, so close I could almost understand it. Stay with me. It said, low, urgent, and something inside my chest tightened sharply, like that memory was not just something I saw, but something I felt, something I had lived. I opened my eyes quickly, breath catching, the elevator still moving, the numbers climbing slowly above the door. I swallowed hard, my pulse racing again, not from fear, but from something deeper, something that felt like recognition trying to break through. I shook my head slightly, trying to push it away, because it did not make sense. None of this made sense. The elevator stopped with a soft chime, and the doors opened to my floor, the familiar hallway stretching out in front of me, quiet, still, exactly the way I had left it. I stepped out slowly, my heels softer against the carpet, my movements more careful now, like I was entering a place I knew but did not fully trust anymore. I reached my door, pulling my keys from my bag, the small metallic sound grounding me just enough to focus. I unlocked it, pushed it open, and stepped inside, the light from the street filtering faintly through the windows, casting soft shadows across the room. Everything was exactly where it should be. The couch, the table, the small stack of books I had left earlier, untouched, unchanged, and yet, I did not relax. Because something inside me refused to believe that nothing had followed me here. I closed the door behind me slowly, the quiet click settling into the silence. And for a moment, I just stood there, listening, not for a sound, but for a feeling, that same awareness, that same presence. But there was nothing, just the stillness of my apartment. I let out a breath I did not realize I was holding, taking a step further inside. And then I saw it. On the table, something that had not been there before, a small black box, simple, unmarked, placed exactly in the center like it had been waiting for me. My heart skipped once, sharp and immediate, because I knew, without needing to open it, without needing to ask, that it had nothing to do with chance. I moved closer slowly, each step deliberate, my fingers brushing lightly against the necklace as if for reassurance. But the metal felt different now, heavier, like it carried more than just weight. I reached the table, staring down at the box, my reflection faint on its surface, distorted, uncertain, and after a brief hesitation, I lifted the lid. Inside, resting on a piece of dark velvet, was a photograph, old, slightly faded, and the moment my eyes landed on it, my breath stopped completely, because it was me, younger, maybe 8 or 9, standing beside a boy I did not recognize, his hand holding mine. Both of us smiling at something outside the frame, and around my neck, unmistakable, was the same necklace, only this time, it did not look like it belonged to me. It looked like it had been given to me, and beneath the photo, written in careful, deliberate handwriting, were 5 words that made everything inside me go still. You were never meant to forget. My hand started to shake, not violently, not enough to drop the photograph, but just enough that I could feel it, that subtle loss of control that comes when something inside you begins to crack. I stared at the image, at the girl who looked exactly like me and yet felt like a stranger, her smile too easy, too certain, like she knew things I did not, like she belonged somewhere I could not reach anymore, and the boy beside her. I focused on him next, searching for recognition, for anything familiar, but there was nothing, just a face I had never seen and yet somehow felt connected to, like a name on the tip of my tongue that refused to form. My thumb brushed lightly over the necklace in the photo, tracing its shape, identical, unchanged, and a sharp thought cut through everything else. I had not found this necklace. It had been given to me. The realization settled deep, heavy, undeniable. I swallowed, my throat dry, and read the words again, slower this time. You were never meant to forget. The sentence did not feel like a threat. It felt like a correction, like something had gone wrong, and this was the first attempt to fix it. I set the photograph down carefully, like it might break if I held it too tightly, and took a step back, my eyes scanning the room again, sharper now, more aware. This was not random. Nothing about this was random. The box, the photo, the message, it had been placed here deliberately, precisely, and that meant someone had been inside my apartment, not long ago, not hours, minutes, maybe less. My breath slowed, controlled, but my senses sharpened, every small detail suddenly louder. The faint hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of traffic outside, the soft shift of air near the window. I turned slightly, my gaze landing there instinctively. The curtains were still, but not perfectly, just enough movement to suggest they had been disturbed recently. My heart pressed harder against my ribs, not panic, not yet, but awareness, clear and focused. I moved slowly across the room, each step deliberate, quiet, my fingers brushing lightly along the edge of the table as I passed, grounding myself, reminding myself that this was real, that I was here, present, aware. I reached the window, hesitating for just a second before pulling the curtain aside. The city stretched out below, lights flickering, cars passing. Everything normal, everything exactly as it should be, except for one detail. Across the street, the same black car was still there, unmoving, patient, and even though I could not see inside, I knew with a certainty that did not come from logic, that he was still watching, still waiting. I let the curtain fall back into place slowly, my fingers lingering on the fabric for a moment. And then I turned back toward the table, toward the photograph, toward the version of me that existed before everything went quiet inside my head. What happened to you? I whispered, but the question echoed back at me differently this time, not directed at the girl in the picture, but at myself. I moved closer again, picking up the photograph once more, studying it with more intent, more focus, the details sharper now, the way the boy's hand held mine, not loosely, not casually, but firmly, like he was making a promise, like he was trying to keep me from slipping away. And something inside my chest tightened painfully, because that feeling, that sense of being held on to, it felt familiar, deeply familiar, and for a brief second, just one, a memory pushed through clearer than before, a voice, the same voice from earlier, closer now, urgent, softer. I will find you again, it said, and my breath caught sharply, my fingers tightening around the edge of the photograph, because this time, I understood it, not fully, not completely, but enough to feel its weight. enough to know it mattered. And as I stood there, holding a past I could not remember but could suddenly feel, one truth settled quietly, heavily, into place. This was not about discovering something new. This was about something that had been taken from me, something important, something someone had never intended for me to lose. And now, piece by piece, it was coming back, whether I was ready for it or not. The room felt smaller now, not because anything had changed, but because something inside me had shifted just enough to make everything else feel tighter, closer, like the walls were quietly leaning in to listen. I placed the photograph back into the box, but I did not close it. I could not. It felt wrong to hide it again, like I had already done that once without realizing it. And I was not sure I was allowed to do it twice. My fingers lingered on the edge of the velvet, tracing its softness, grounding myself in something real while everything else felt uncertain. I turned slowly, my gaze moving across the apartment, sharper now, searching, not just looking, because the message had been clear. Someone had been here, not to take anything, not to break anything, but to leave something behind, and that was more unsettling than anything else. I stepped toward the hallway, each movement quiet, deliberate, my breath steady even as my thoughts were not. The bedroom door was slightly open, just a few inches, not enough to notice if you were not paying attention, but I was now. I noticed everything. I pushed it open slowly, the soft creak of the hinge louder than it should have been. The room inside looked untouched, the bed neatly made, the lamp off, the window closed, everything in place, and yet, I did not relax, because I could feel it, that faint shift in the air, like someone had stood here not long ago, like the space still remembered them. I stepped inside, my eyes scanning carefully, methodically, the dresser, the mirror, the small stack of books on the nightstand, all exactly as I had left them, except for one thing, something small, almost invisible unless you knew where to look. The drawer of my nightstand was not fully closed, just slightly off, a fraction of an inch. I felt my pulse slow, not from calm, but from focus. I moved closer, reaching out with steady fingers, pulling the drawer open slowly. Inside, everything looked normal at first. Glance, my journal, a pen, a few loose receipts, nothing out of place, until I saw it, tucked beneath the journal, partially hidden, a second photograph, older than the first, edges worn, colors faded, like it had been carried, kept, held onto for a long time. I lifted it carefully, my breath already catching before I even looked fully, and when I did, the world seemed to pause. It was the same two children, me and the boy, but this time, we were not smiling. We were standing closer, his arms slightly in front of me, protective, instinctive, and behind us, blurred but unmistakable, was a building I did not recognize, tall, imposing, unfamiliar, yet something about it pulled at me, like a place I had seen before but could not place. My fingers tightened slightly around the edge of the photo, and then I noticed it, something I had missed at first, written in small, careful handwriting along the back. I turned it over slowly, my heart already knowing this would not make things easier. Only clearer, and clarity, I was starting to realize, came with a cost. The words were simple, but they hit harder than anything else so far. You promised you would come back. I stared at them, my chest tightening, because this was not just about memory anymore. This was about a choice, a promise, something I had made and forgotten, something someone else had not. A faint sound pulled me from the moment, soft, almost nothing, but enough. I froze, listening, my body going still in a way that felt instinctive, practiced, like I had done this before. The sound came again, faint, from the living room. A shift, a presence. I lowered the photograph slowly, my breath quiet, controlled, and in that moment, I understood something with absolute clarity. Whoever had been here earlier, whoever had left these pieces behind, they had not just come and gone. They had stayed, or they had come back. And this time, they were not waiting for me to find the past on my own. They were here to make sure I did. I did not move right away, not because I was frozen, but because something deeper told me to wait, to listen, to understand before reacting. The photograph was still in my hand, the edges pressing lightly into my skin, grounding me just enough to stay present. The sound came again, soft, deliberate, not accidental, and this time, I knew exactly where it was coming from. The living room, near the window. My breath slowed, controlled. Every inhale measured, every exhale quiet. I placed the photograph gently on the dresser, careful, precise, like any sudden movement might shift something I could not see. I stepped toward the door, each footfall silent against the carpet, my body moving in a way that felt unfamiliar and yet instinctively correct, like I had done this before. Like I knew how to move without being heard, even if I did not remember learning it. The hallway stretched out in front of me, dim, still, but not empty. Not anymore. I reached the edge of it and paused, just for a second, letting my senses adjust. The faint scent of something unfamiliar lingered in the air, subtle, clean, not intrusive, but present enough to notice. My heart did not race. Not this time. It steadied, focused, like it understood that panic would not help me here. I stepped into the living room slowly, my gaze scanning the space, the couch, the table, the open box still resting in the center. Exactly where I had left it, untouched, unchanged, and yet, the air felt different, charged in a way I could not explain. I turned slightly toward the window, the curtains barely shifting, just enough to suggest movement had been there moments ago. And then I saw him, not clearly at first, just the outline, the shape of someone standing near the far wall where the shadows gathered, still, composed, like he had been there long enough to belong. My breath caught, not in fear, but in recognition. That came from somewhere deeper than thought. Because even before he stepped forward, even before the light touched his face, I knew who it was. "You should not have come alone," he said, his voice low, steady, filling the space without raising at all. And the moment he moved into the light, everything inside me tightened. Adrian. Exactly as I had seen him before, controlled, precise, but now closer, more real, less distant than the man who stood across a ballroom. "You were already here," I replied, my voice quieter than his, but no less certain, and for a brief second, something shifted in his expression, not surprise, not quite approval, something in between, like I had said exactly what he expected. "I needed to be," he said simply, his eyes flickering briefly to the necklace at my collarbone, then back to my face. That same intensity returning, sharper now, more focused. "They found you faster than I thought," he added, and the words settled heavily, because they confirmed something I had only begun to suspect. This was not just about him, not just about my past. There were others, unseen, moving in the same direction. "Who?" I asked, taking a small step forward before I could stop myself, drawn in despite everything. His gaze followed the movement, tracking it carefully, like every inch mattered. "The ones who made you forget," he said quietly, and something inside me dropped, not fear, not shock, but something heavier, something that felt like truth finally finding its place. My fingers tightened instinctively around the necklace, and this time, it did not feel like comfort. It felt like a key, something important, something dangerous. "And you?" I asked, holding his gaze, refusing to look away now. "What did you do?" The question lingered between us, sharp, direct, and for the first time, Adrian did not answer immediately, his jaw tightening slightly, his eyes shifting just enough to show that whatever the answer was, it mattered, more than anything else so far. "I tried to bring you back," he said finally, his voice lower now, heavier, and the weight of those words pressed into my chest, because they felt real in a way I could not explain, like they belonged to a story I had lived but could not remember. The room fell quiet again, but not empty, never empty now, and as I stood there, facing him, holding fragments of a past that refused to stay buried, one thing became painfully clear. Whatever I had lost was not gone, it had been taken, and now, it was coming back piece by piece, not gently, not slowly, but exactly the way it had been hidden, with intention, with purpose, and with consequences I was only beginning to understand. His words did not echo, they settled, heavy and precise, like something that had been waiting years to be said out loud. I held his gaze, refusing to look away now, because looking away felt like losing something again, and I was starting to understand that I had already lost enough. "Bring me back to what?" I asked quietly, my voice steadier than I felt, but there was something underneath it now, something sharper, something that wanted answers instead of avoiding them. Adrian did not move closer, but his presence filled the space anyway, controlled, deliberate, like every inch between us was chosen. "To who you were," he said, and that answer should have been simple. But it was not. It was layered, complicated, like he was speaking about someone else entirely, not the person standing in front of him. My fingers brushed the necklace again, slower this time, more aware. And who was I? I pressed, because if he knew, if he had been looking for me all this time, then he had to know something I did not, something I had lost. His jaw tightened slightly, not in resistance, but in restraint, like he was choosing his next words carefully, measuring how much to give, how much to hold back, someone they could not control. He said finally, and the sentence landed differently than everything else, not confusing, not unclear, but direct, solid, like a piece of truth that did not need explanation. My breath caught slightly, because something inside me reacted to that. Not fear, not doubt, recognition, quiet but undeniable, like hearing your own name in a crowded room. That is why they erased you. He continued, his voice lower now, not softer, but heavier, and I felt it, that shift again, something aligning inside me, pieces that had not made sense beginning to move closer together. Erased me. I repeated slowly, the words strange in my mouth, unfamiliar, and yet fitting. My mind searched for resistance, for disbelief, but it did not find it, not fully, because the truth was, I did not remember enough to argue. I had no past to defend, only gaps, only silence where something should have been. I took a small step forward, closing some of the distance between us without realizing it, drawn in by something I could not name. And you expect me to believe that? I asked, but the question lacked force, lacked the certainty it should have had. Adrian's eyes held mine, steady, unwavering, and for the first time, I saw something else there, not just control, not just calculation, but something deeper, something that looked almost like regret. No, he said quietly, and that single word surprised me more than anything else. I expect you to feel it. He added, and the moment he said it, something shifted again, not outside, but inside me, a pressure building just beneath the surface, subtle at first, then sharper, like something pushing against a barrier that had been there for too long. I inhaled slowly, but it did not help. The feeling grew, expanding, pressing, until a fragment broke through, clearer than anything before, not just a voice this time, not just a sensation, but an image, sharp, immediate. I saw the boy again, closer now, older than in the photo, his eyes fixed on mine, serious, determined. Do not forget me, he said, and the words hit harder than they should have, like they carried weight from somewhere deep, somewhere real. I gasped softly, the memory slipping away as quickly as it came, leaving behind only the echo, the feeling. I looked at Adrian again, my heart racing now, not from fear, but from something else entirely, something that felt dangerously close to understanding. I know him, I said, the realization forming even as I spoke, incomplete, but undeniable, and Adrian did not look surprised, not even slightly, like this was exactly what he had been waiting for. Yes, he said quietly, his voice steady, certain, you do. And in that moment, standing in the middle of a life that no longer felt entirely mine, one truth settled into place with absolute clarity. This was not about discovering something new. This was about remembering something that had never truly left, something that had been buried, hidden, protected, and now, it was breaking through, piece by piece, whether I was ready or not. The way he said it, calm, certain, like there was no version of reality where I did not remember, unsettled me more than the memory itself. I shook my head slightly, as if that could push the image away, as if that could give me back the control I was starting to lose. No, I whispered, but the word felt weak, unconvincing, because something inside me had already shifted, something had already accepted that this was real, that this was mine, whether I wanted it or not. I took another step back, needing space, needing distance, but the room did not feel bigger. It felt tighter, like the truth was closing in instead of letting me breathe. You were telling me I had a life I do not remember, a promise I do not recall, and somehow you are part of all of it. My voice rose slightly, not loud, but sharper, edged with something close to frustration. Adrian did not react to the tone. He did not step forward, did not interrupt. He simply watched me, steady, patient, like he had expected this, like this reaction was part of the process. I am not part of it, he said quietly, and something in his voice made me still, just slightly. I am the reason you survived it, he added, and the words landed differently, heavier, pulling something deep inside me that I could not ignore. My breath caught, because that sentence felt wrong and right at the same time, like a truth I could not fully understand yet. Survived what? I asked, softer now, because suddenly the question mattered more than anything else. The room seemed to hold its breath with me, the silence stretching just long enough to make the answer feel significant before it even came. Adrian's gaze did not waver, but something behind it darkened, not with anger, not with threat, but with memory. The night they tried to erase you completely, he said, and the moment those words left his mouth, something inside me reacted, not slowly, not gently, but all at once, a sharp pressure behind my eyes, a rush of images too fast to hold, too fragmented to understand. I saw flashes, light cutting through darkness, voices overlapping, urgent, chaotic, not loud, but intense, like everything was happening at once, and I could not focus on any of it. My hand flew instinctively to my head, my breath uneven now, the necklace pressing against my chest like it was pulsing with the memory, amplifying it. And then, just as quickly, everything stopped, leaving behind only one clear image. The boy again, older than before, standing in front of me, his expression serious, determined, his hand reaching for mine. You promised, he said, and this time, I felt it, not just heard it. The weight of that promise, the importance of it, something that mattered more than I could explain. I gasped softly, my eyes snapping back to the present, to Adrian, who had not moved, who had not interrupted, who had simply watched me. Remember, he is real, I said, the words barely above a breath, but filled with certainty now, not doubt, not confusion, but something solid, something that had finally taken shape. Adrian nodded once, slow, deliberate. He is the reason they wanted you gone, he said, and that sentence shifted everything again, my thoughts racing to catch up, to connect pieces that still felt incomplete. And you? I asked, my voice steadier now, stronger, because something inside me was changing, aligning. Where were you in all of this? The question hung between us, sharper than before, more direct, because now, I needed to know, not just what had happened, but where he fit into it, why he had been looking for me, why he had found me now. Adrian exhaled slowly, the first real sign of tension breaking through his control, just for a moment, before he met my eyes again, fully, completely. I was the one who made sure you forgot, he said, and the world did not shatter, it did not collapse, but something inside me did, quietly, deeply, because that answer changed everything I thought I understood, not just about him, but about myself, about what had been taken, and what had been protected. And as I stood there, staring at the man who had both saved and erased me, one realization settled in, heavier than anything else so far. The truth was not just something I had lost, it was something someone had chosen for me, and now, I had to decide what to do with it. The silence after his words did not feel empty, it felt full, dense, like the air itself had weight now, pressing against my chest, making it harder to breathe. I stared at him, trying to reconcile the man in front of me with the truth he had just given me. You made me forget, I repeated slowly, the sentence foreign and familiar at the same time, like it belonged to a story I was only now stepping into. Adrian did not deny it, did not soften it. He simply held my gaze, steady, unflinching, like he understood exactly what that admission meant. It was the only way to keep you alive, he said, and that should have sounded like justification, like an excuse, but it did not. It sounded like fact, cold, necessary, final. I shook my head slightly, taking another step back, needing distance, needing something to hold on to that made sense. You took my life, I said, my voice quieter now, not accusing, not emotional, just stating it, the same way he had, because that was what it felt like, not stolen, not destroyed, but taken, carefully, deliberately. I protected what mattered, he replied, and something in that answer made my fingers tighten around the necklace again, instinctive, defensive, because suddenly, I understood what he meant, or at least part of it. The promise. I whispered, my voice barely there, but the moment I said it, something inside me responded, like a key turning in a lock. Adrian's eyes shifted. Just slightly, confirming it without needing words. You remembered that first, he said, and there was something in his tone now, something softer, almost relieved, like that detail mattered more than anything else I had recalled. I swallowed, my thoughts racing, trying to connect everything. The boy, the photographs, the message, the feeling that none of this was random. Who is he? I asked, the question sharper now, more urgent, because everything seemed to lead back to that one missing piece. Adrian did not answer immediately, and for the first time, I saw hesitation, real hesitation, not calculation, not control, but something deeper, like the answer carried more weight than the others. He is the reason you were never supposed to be found, he said finally, and the words landed heavily, pulling something tight in my chest, because that meant my disappearance had not just been protection, it had been necessity. And yet you found me, I said, stepping closer without realizing it, drawn in again despite everything. His gaze followed the movement, steady, intense. I never stopped looking, he replied, and that sentence hit differently, not like the others, not like information, but like something personal, something that had existed long before this moment. I held his gaze, searching for something, anything that would tell me why me, why now, why him, what? I asked, the single word carrying more weight than anything else I had said so far, and this time, Adrian did not hesitate, did not look away, did not measure his response. Because you asked me to, he said, and the world seemed to tilt again, not violently, not suddenly, but enough to shift everything out of place. My breath caught, because that answer did not fit into anything I understood. It created something new, something I had not considered. I would not have forgotten that, I said, instinctively, because some things felt too important to lose, too strong to disappear. But Adrian's expression did not change, his certainty did not waver. You did not forget, he said quietly, his voice lower now, more deliberate. You chose to. The words settled deeper than anything else, heavier, sharper, because they did not take something away from me. They gave something back, responsibility, choice. And that was more unsettling than anything else so far. I felt it then, not a memory, not an image, but a feeling, clear and undeniable, a moment where I had stood in front of him, just like this, only younger, more certain, more afraid, and I had said something important, something final, and even though I could not hear the words yet, I knew what they meant, I knew what I had done, and as I stood there now, facing the man who had carried that choice for me all these years, one truth became impossible to ignore. I had not just lost my past, I had trusted him with it, and now, I had to decide if I was ready to take it back. The words stayed between us, not fading, not softening, but settling into something final, something that could not be undone. I stood there, feeling the weight of a choice I did not remember making but could suddenly feel, deep and certain, like it had always been part of me even when I did not know it. I chose to forget, I repeated quietly, and this time, it did not sound like confusion, it sounded like truth. Adrian did not move, did not interrupt, he simply watched me, like this moment mattered more than anything that had come before it. My fingers lifted slowly to the necklace, tracing its edges with new understanding. This was not just a memory, not just a symbol, it was a promise, something I had carried even when everything else was gone. I closed my eyes for a brief second, and this time, the memory did not fight me. It came, clear, steady, like it had been waiting for me to be ready. I saw him again. The boy, older now, standing in front of me, his hand in mine, his eyes filled with something I could not name before, but understood now. Trust, absolute and unwavering. If they find you, you cannot remember me, I heard myself say. My own voice younger, stronger than I expected, and it hit me all at once. I had known, I had understood the cost, and I had accepted it, not because I wanted to forget, but because I had to, because something bigger depended on it. I opened my eyes slowly, the present returning around me, the room, the silence, Adrian still standing exactly where he had been, but now, everything felt different, clearer, like I was finally standing in my own life instead of just passing through it. He is still out there, I said, the realization forming fully now, not a question, not doubt, but certainty. Adrian's gaze sharpened slightly, a flicker of something intense passing through his expression. Yes, he said, and that single word carried more weight than anything else, because it meant this was not over. It had never been over. I took a slow breath, steadying myself, not from fear, but from the magnitude of what I was beginning to understand. And they are still looking for him, I continued. The pieces aligning faster now, clearer. Adrian nodded once, deliberate, confirming it without hesitation. The silence that followed was different this time. Not heavy, not uncertain, but filled with something else, something that felt like direction, like the beginning of something instead of the unraveling of everything. I looked at him, really looked at him, not as the man who had taken my memories, but as the one who had carried them for me, protected them, waited for me to be ready to take them back. You said you were the reason I survived, I said quietly, and he did not look away, did not soften. He simply held that truth the way he had held everything else, steady and unchanging. I nodded slowly, more to myself than to him, because I understood now. Not everything, not yet, but enough to make a choice, my choice. This time, I stepped forward, closing the distance between us completely, no hesitation, no uncertainty, just clarity. Then you can help me remember the rest, I said, my voice calm, certain, and this time, it did not feel like a question, it felt like a decision. Adrian's expression shifted, just slightly, something almost like relief breaking through the control he held so tightly, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared, replaced by that same steady focus. I can, he said, and there was no doubt in it, no hesitation, only certainty. I nodded once, my fingers tightening briefly around the necklace before letting it fall back against my skin, its weight different now, not a mystery, not a question, but a reminder of who I was, of what I had chosen, of what still remained. And as I stood there, at the edge of a past I was finally ready to face, one truth settled quietly into place. The girl who forgot had been necessary, but she was not who I was anymore, and whatever came next, whatever waited beyond the memories I had yet to reclaim, I would not be running from it. I would be walking toward it, because this time, I knew exactly what I stood to lose if I did not.